Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Okay. Good.
I'll put an okay on that too. All right.
Okay, very good.
Any changes from yesterday?
Hold on.
Go ahead. So what you got to do?
I'm getting the feedback from the
Dave, I didn't see a link sent out.
damn it, I lost it.
Hi, Dave. Happy Easter.
There is life. That's good.
I see somebody is a Morantz fan.
Well, I have one in my office. I can turn it on if you like. We can listen to my radio station on it. But we actually have a promo that says, if you're listening to one of those really boring Zoom meetings, you might want to put our radio station on in the background, but be sure to mute your mic first because,
Cause a little bit of problem.
yeah, but it makes the meeting go faster.
Oh yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, I have a 2270 that I partially restored enough to keep it working. The main thing is the speaker protection circuit caps go bad.
Yeah, well, that happens. I've got one well, it's at the Texas Broadcast Museum, but it came from me. Somebody brought me this. I think it's a 4400. It's the quadraphonic version with the oscilloscope built in it, and
Oh, cool.
it was in really terrible shape when I got it, and it's the most complicated piece of equipment I think I've ever messed with. I mean, some of these TV cameras and things are easier to work on. That thing, I got a schematic for it, and I had to have it blown up the size of a bed sheet because it had there's one circuit board on top of another on top of another in the thing, and there's all these wires that go on the schematic that are continued to page 7 or something, which is just a lot of fun to work on.
Yeah, if you're a non-drinker at the start of working on one of
Oh,
those.
you will be.
You'll be a drinker at the end of it.
Absolutely. Yes, you will.
And Absolute might be one of the ones you might.
Yeah, right. It sounds
Yeah,
pretty good, though. Good.
mine wasn't too bad. It was straightforward. It didn't have sandwich boards in it like the quads do. And mine being the 2270, so that's from about 1974, because that was the manufacturer stamp inside of it. And I got it from a friend. Shocked the heck out of me. It was my last days on the job, and he says, "Come over to my car. I got something for you in the trunk." So I figured it was an airplane or something because he was into model airplanes and stuff like that. And there was the Marantz. I went, "Oh my God." But then later on, I researched it, how expensive these things are going for, even as a parts set. It's
Oh yeah, they go for nuts money
ridiculous.
these days. I
Oh,
don't. I mean, they're really not any better than a Pioneer or a Kenwood or something like that. They're all about the same, but you know,
the
hey, people pay
Kenwood,
for it.
the Kenwoods, I found that their driver boards go bad on their higher wattage ones because I have a 6160 and the driver board fried. And I remember a buddy of mine had one, his fried, and a lot of times when the driver boards fry, it takes out the finals because it goes right through
Of
everything,
course, yeah.
direct coupling and all that.
Yep.
And so I
That
have
was a feature when they were new, direct coupling, so.
oh yeah, no distortion, da da da,
Right.
full power, full speed ahead, and all that jazz.
Old Crown amps are really great about that too, because when they Zorted out, they'd put about 65 volts at 10 amps out into your speakers.
Ooh, that's not good. Not
Yeah,
good.
I had a fleet of those because I was in the live sound business for years and years, and at the time, back in the early 70s, that was the only thing you could buy that had enough power, and they really weren't enough. But boy, when one of them flipped out, it would take out speakers that you wouldn't believe. Oh
Yeah.
well. Yeah, this one behind me, I bought at a garage sale down the street from me. I might have paid $25 for it or something. They were happy to get rid of it. It
Huh,
works. I haven't done anything to it other than connect speakers up to it.
huh.
The volume control is kind of crunchy every now and then. The left channel will crap out on it, and if you wiggle the volume control, it comes back. But I haven't felt like playing with it. I got enough other projects.
Yeah, the one I had to replace all the lamps. I think there was one lamp left. I said no, they're all going because as soon as I relamp it, that one's going to go anyways. I just relamped the whole thing. I left the original incandescence, that style in it because I tend to lean towards the warmth look of incandescence.
You can get LEDs that are like 2800 degrees Kelvin, and they're okay. They look all right.
Yeah,
But a lot of
yeah.
people put blue ones in there, and I think that looks horrible personally. But
Yeah, I think
that's
that
just me.
overdoes it because it's it's blue ready.
Yep, it's already blue. Well, anyway, this one I haven't done anything to. The 4400 needed all new lamps. Almost every one of them was bad. The power switch was bad. The oscilloscope didn't work. The power supply kept crapping out. Did some really weird things. All the switches were dirty. You name it, it was all there. So anyway, is Dave around here? He must be here somewhere. I
Well,
see.
he has it set up and it's recording and everything. So
Yeah, well, we've
we have to
been.
mind our P's and Q's. I actually came on to say Happy Easter to him, but he didn't reply. So
Yes. Yeah, Dave is, if you may not know, he's in hospital right now, but he's
Oh,
here.
no. Oh, I didn't know that. Hope he's okay. This getting old stuff sucks.
yeah, it does.
Well, there's the alternative.
Well, exactly. It beats the alternative, but oh well.
Yeah, it gets nasty after a while. going
does.
steady with all these doctors and whatnot.
Hmm. Yeah, when your calendar is all full of doctor's appointments, it gets really old.
Yeah.
I think that's the definition of getting old.
Yep. Well, you ought to know. So.
Yeah, right. Hey, let's wait a couple more minutes to start.
I think that's one of the reasons for collecting old things. I want to be surrounded by things that are at least as old as I am.
There's some comfort in that, isn't there?
Yep.
The things you actually understand rather than,
Yeah, familiarity. If it stops working, you know what to do.
right. There is that. Hey, I'm going to bring a bunch of stuff to the ETF meeting. I think I've reserved a swap meet table, and I'm wondering, since this is a museum dumping stuff, what people would be interested in. We got a bunch of test equipment we don't know what to do with. Question, whether it's any good or not, I don't know, and we got a ton of ENG cameras, many of which work, 3-chip cameras that cost $30,000-$40,000 not that long ago that are almost just doorstops now, but they're kind of cool to play with.
Right. Hey, Chuck, I'd be interested in test equipment. I got some from you a couple years ago, and I'd be interested in some. So maybe I can message you offline. You can tell me what you have.
Yeah, well, I won't know until we figure it out, but
okay.
Well, I got a big pile of it that
I'm bringing test gear too, so there'll be plenty.
That's
Okay.
great.
All right. Well, I don't know what we've got, to be honest with you. It's just a big pile right now, and somebody probably want the one on the bottom, of course.
Right.
Question is, what do you do with what doesn't sell? I've got the same question.
Well, I brought some a couple or 3 years ago, and some of it did sell, and I hope it got homes and people were, using the tube testers and things like that. I don't think we're real big on tube testers right now, but a lot of Voldome meters, and I think there's a B&K analyst. Those are kind of dime a dozen these days, I guess. But there's Sencor signal generators and stuff that we'll never use. And it'd be nice to have it in the hands of somebody who would, or at least would think it was cool to look at on a shelf. You have a nice shelf full of stuff back there, it looks like.
That's all tube testers.
All tube testers, okay. Well, you never outgrow your need for tube testers.
No. Well, I've got probably about 20 duplicates I'm trying to sell, and I've got a few people interested, but the tube tester is maybe $50 and shipping is $80. So what do you do?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the big problem with a lot of this is that, we want $10 for the piece, but the shipping costs $100. So it kind of makes it not quite so much fun.
I got away with 2 years ago, I think. I hand delivered a lot of stuff to Kutztown, but I'm not going this year, so might have to go to landfill, some of it.
No, that's not a good idea.
No, don't do that.
What do
Looks
you
like
want?
you got plenty of room behind you.
I have plenty of room. Yes,
Yeah, it
but-
looks like it. Yeah.
Well, that's only a fraction. I've still got where I ran my business is empty, so I've got unlimited storage. That's
I'm assuming we don't have any piles of 7-inch diameter electrostatic deflection CRTs piled up anywhere.
well,
Actually-
no.
We've got a couple of Hallicrafters chassis that have 7-inch. The cases have been destroyed apparently, but supposedly they've been restored before the cases got wet or something, and the cabinets got wet and got destroyed. But I don't know if the tubes are any good in them or not.
I've got a lot of Tektronix oscilloscope tubes.
Yeah, we got some Tektronix scopes.
Yeah, I've got a pile of 500 series scopes too. What do you do with those?
I don't know.
My Sentinel TV set doesn't look that great when everything is green as opposed to black and white.
Well, but sometimes it's better than nothing.
Yep.
Well,
Hey, guys, let's get started.
I'll mute my-
First of all, I want to welcome to the meeting tonight. It's sort of convoluted for me. I flew in from Boulder this afternoon, and flight was delayed, and I was planning on being at the museum to show something, but didn't have time to get there. So it's going to be sort of we're going to skip that part of the meeting for this month. And also, I am probably not going to hang around very long tonight. I'm exhausted. It's been a long day. But anyway, welcome to the meeting. Since Dave isn't here, I will just mention the courtesy announcement, and that is keep your mics muted unless you have something to say, so we don't have background noise. People have been very good about that in the last few meetings. give a quick report on the museum. We keep gaining members above 170 now, and I think based on where we are, we're probably going to top 200 this year, which would be very, very nice. We've also had a significant number of cash donations that always help. The big thing that's coming up, of course, is the convention. We have a little over a month to go. About 47 people registered so far. Most people register at the last minute. This time last year, a month before the convention, we only had 30 registered. So I don't know if that means we're going to have more attendance or people are just being better about registering sooner. But if you're planning on coming, please, the earlier you can register, the easier it is for us to make plans for the number of meals we need and so forth. We have our presenters chosen. You can look online and see them. We have 3 very interesting presentations, all sort of different. And we have the usual. We reorganized the hours a little bit to deal with the issues we had last year with the presentations and lunch. But otherwise, it's a pretty similar format. We'll have the swap meet first thing in the morning, then presentations, then lunch, then they come back to the museum for the auction at 2 o'clock. The silent auction will be about the same time, starting about the same time and going until 5 or 6 at night. And of course, we have the Saturday dinner. So very similar format from last year, and we hope you come. So that's all I've got to report. The prize for the sweepstakes will be announced then. It'll be at the museum, so you get to take a look at it, and drawing will be later at the fall swap meet. It's a pretty exciting prize, I think, and I think it's going to draw a bunch of people in to bid on it. That's a major fundraiser for us. Typically net $8,000 to $10,000 for it, so that's 20% of our 15-20% of our budget. Okay, that's all I've got. We don't have a speaker tonight. And so I'll just throw the floor open. Oh, first, is there anybody who is new, never been on the meeting before, that would like to introduce themselves?
Sure, I'll say hi. I'm Thomas Stady. I have been working on some CRT related projects. I was at the convention a couple years ago, so I thought I'd stop by in a meeting.
Great, glad to have you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Maddie. Sorry much. I'm 15 and I collect kind of late 90s, early 2000s CRTs.
Okay, hi Maddie, welcome. You were with us last month, right?
Yeah, I don't say much though. Just kind of sit there. Thought I didn't know if that's okay.
Welcome. Hope you enjoy it. Anybody else?
I might as well say something. Let me turn my camera on so you can see my ugly mug. There I am. I'm Frank in Florida, otherwise known as Frank Fetzko. Originally from New Jersey, exit 14A, and now residing in Central Florida. Had to get away from the madness of taxation and snowflakes and snow on the ground as well. And I don't collect TVs, but I marvel at the history of it, because the oldest TV we had in my household, which sadly I had to bust up and I had no place to put it, was a I believe it was a 63 Zenith round tube color TV. And it was the one that had the separate bass and treble for the audio section. So Hogan's Heroes sounded mighty good. So anyway, that's about all I got. And I'll just keep an ear on things.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Welcome, Frank. Glad to have you here. Is there anybody else that would like to introduce themselves?
This is Cassie, the Wonder Dog, the Yorkie, okay? And
Yeah.
that's my granddaughter. And I'm Richard Lee, President, New Jersey Antique Radio Club. And Frank is a member too, and Mr. Ring is a member. A few other people are members. And I'm sitting in for Dave tonight, who's, I'll say, under the weather.
Thank you for doing that. I talked to Dave earlier today, and he was a little worried about how we were going to pull this off, but sounds like you stepped in to take over, which is nice. Hopefully Dave will be out of the hospital soon. I think he's been under the weather for quite a while now, but I think he's making progress, which is good.
So far, so good, yes.
Yeah, right. Anybody else?
I'm
Dogs,
Kevin.
cats, turtles?
I'm Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
What
I,
year's,
uh, I
what year's the
collect-
car in the background?
Oh, 1939 Lincoln Zephyr Coupe.
Nice, very
I
nice.
collect, I guess, old televisions, 1939, and a couple of mechanical. And I don't know anything about them. I just like the way they look. And I'm very quiet.
Okay, well, Kevin, I'm glad you're with us.
Thank you.
Aren't very many people that collect the pre-war stuff. Okay, any more? There's a lot of people tonight.
Steve, this is Dave Arland. I'm not new, I'm on the board, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you and to thank Chuck Azolina for helping me to restore, finally, the picture tube in my TRK-12. So unfortunately, the original tube went to air sometime over the last 6 months or so, but I was lucky to have one of the radar tubes, one of the few that were purchased, and Steve loaned the socket for the museum set to Chuck so he could configure it properly. And Ed Milburn and I got it up and running a few days ago. So just in time for the 85th anniversary, it's all ready to go. So I just wanted to publicly say thank you for your help.
Well, we really didn't do much, but thanks for the thanks.
And it looks great, as you can see.
I can see that looks terrific.
No ion spot.
Well, if there's nobody else, let's just open the floor up for anybody to talk about anything they want to. So go to it.
Hey, Richard, I see a Trilon and Paris Fair behind you.
I collect 39 World's Fair memorabilia.
Oh.
And no, I wasn't there.
Well, I collect 64 World's Fair memorabilia.
Well, you were
And
probably there.
this year is the 60th anniversary. And
Well, I was at 64. I lived in New York.
Yeah,
I did.
was
That was a
in-
common class trip to take.
I was in Southern Connecticut, so I also made it to the 64 World's Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. I was there. That was a good one.
Yeah, I'd like to
It
get
was-
a time machine and go back to 39 though.
Yep. Funny, well, maybe not too funny story. I don't know. In 1970, we made a family trip down to Disney in Florida. And it turned out to be the first time I ever had, I guess, what would be called a deja vu, because I knew I had never been to Florida before and I'd never been to Disney before, but yet I knew I had been on some of those rides before and I couldn't figure it out. And it was very troubling to me until years later I realized that some of the exhibits from the 64 World's Fair in New York that I had been on had been transported down and relocated to Disney in Orlando, and it's like, oh, okay, that's why I wasn't really losing my mind. It was the same rides.
Yeah, and in a equal way, if you've ever spent time in New York City, a place called Coney Island,
Oh,
they
yeah.
have the parachute jump.
Yep.
And that was not originally from Coney Island. That also was taken from the 39 World's Fair.
Ah, okay. I knew the ride. I didn't know it went back to 39.
Yep. And yes, my mother was on it. Yes.
I did get to sit in a 64.5 Mustang at the time. I guess I could ask a question and hopefully doesn't open up a can of worms. I have an Admiral Triple Thrill from 48, 49. It's a combination radio, record player, television set, and I have some not major, but some horizontal linearity issues, and there are no horizontal linearity controls on the back of the set. So where do I look as far as what components might be causing my linearity issue?
Well, how old is the set?
48, 49 vintage.
Time to recap it.
Well,
yeah, I have no help either.
Yeah, I did do all the typical recaps, but I'm wondering if I missed something like inside the high voltage cage that I really tried to stay away from. And I did all the wax paper caps and I did all the electrolytics, and the set plays fine unless you see something that's like one of those, test pattern round things that doesn't quite look round. The vertical linearity is fine, but the horizontal isn't. It's a little more egg shaped. It's not really bad, but it's a little bit more egg shaped, and there's no adjustment like a vertical linearity control to get rid of it. So I'm trying to figure out what components affect the linearity of that sweep that I should look into. So it's probably a capacitor or multiple capacitors is what you're telling me?
Usually a coil.
See, a coil. Okay, that's like the inverse of a capacitor. So I certainly didn't look at any coils.
There might be a linearity coil adjustment in there.
Hmm.
Do you have a horizontal drive control?
Yes, I think it does. Yeah, I don't have the schematic in front of me.
Okay, that's something to look at. And some of the resistors associated with the horizontal output section,
Okay.
you could check to see if they're in spec.
Okay, thanks. I'll look into that. I didn't want to just start randomly shotgunning things if, people who had been there before and or understood the circuitry could point me in the right direction as opposed to just randomly attacking things.
There aren't actually that many controls in the horizontal linearity, but so a lot of sets, I guess, I'm not sure if yours is new enough to have this, but a lot of them have a horizontal linearity coil like this, which is kind of fascinating. It's basically a variable inductor, but it's not. What it does is it has a magnetic bias. So this knob is magnetized, and so there's this magnetic bias in one direction, which causes it to saturate in one direction, not the other. So that causes left to right linearity correction, just because the inductance is lower with one sign of current than the other. So if you have any coils that have like either glued on magnet or some sort of adjustable magnet that you can turn, that would be an adjustment for left to right linearity.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks. I mean, that looks a lot newer than anything that's in my Admiral television set, but I get the idea. So
You gotta find the SAMS folder. It'll probably go pretty well into how to adjust any linearity that might be.
Yeah, there's no I've got the schematics, I got the SAMs. There's nothing that's labeled linearity of any kind except for vertical. So, supposedly, I guess it was something that didn't have to be done, and if a component has gone south, maybe the linearity would be not so good, and then it's something you have to change out, but I don't know.
That was 70 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't born when the TV was, but
As the one last thing is the most of the linearity error comes from the resistance of the yoke. So if you have just a bad connection to the horizontal yoke or a dirty connection anywhere on that can cause linearity error too.
Okay.
I'm so sorry I'm trying not to butt in. Is my microphone working? This is Katie Madama.
Yes.
It's working? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Oh, well, I just wanted to say hello and thank you for having these meetings. And I'm sorry I don't have a cam on my desktop, but I was one of the models at the New Jersey Pavilion at the 1964 World's Fair. So I couldn't help but want to say hello.
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 You must have been only 12 years old then.
I was 16 at the time. And I was one of 4 models, and we modeled all afternoon in the heat. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And so when you gentlemen were talking about it, I couldn't help but shove the microphone in there and hope it worked. So thank you so much. If anybody wants an autograph, just message me and I'll mail you one in the mail. I'll get a stamp and mail it to you. But I'm a producer here in at TV 21 New Jersey. So I've been involved in television most of my life, and I love vintage. So thanks for having me all the time.
Do you have any photographs or memorabilia from that?
Well, I have myself on film, and I have myself on film. I don't know how I could probably have my daughter, because she does a lot of editing. I could certainly get her to get a clip of me coming down the walkway, the walking ramp at the pavilion. And I'd be very happy to have her do that and mail a picture to anybody that wants one.
The folks at worldsfaircommunity.org would love to see that.
Oh, I didn't even know that existed.
Worldfair.org. Please do go there.
Okay.
World's Fair, excuse me, worldsfaircommunity.org.
Okay. Well, I'll do that, and I promise to go in there, and I promise to I never break a promise. So once I say I'm going to do something, I always do it. And I'll see about getting a pic out of the film. She's very clever, and I'm sure if anybody can get it, she can. I write stuff for television and movie. I'm a screenwriter, actually. I'm not the tech person, but she is. And I promise to make sure that I get a photograph of me that I can autograph and mail to anybody who wants it. Thank you so much. You've been so sweet.
Okay, one other site, worldsfairphotos.com. The proprietor there is Bill Cotter, who restores tons of old home movies and snapshots from the fair.
Well, thank you so much. I've written it all down. Thank you. And I'm sorry that I interrupted your meeting. I'll mute myself out. If anybody needs me, you can ask me a question, but take care. I just want to sit back and relax and listen to you boys prattle on about old TV and radio, my favorite thing. Take care now.
Hey, it's not all guys in here.
Oh, there's another lady in here. Well, good for
Yes.
you. Wow. I don't think I could find one other female interested in old radios anywhere. I thought I was the only one. So I applaud you. I don't see you up there, but I applaud you and thanks for saying hi.
One of our really good volunteers at the Texas Broadcast Museum is a lady who comes every Friday and fixes things, and she's really good at it too.
Oh my God.
So it does happen.
That's wonderful. That gives me hope.
No, Carly's really good. She really loves turntables and tape recorders. That's a real big deal. But
Oh
she,
yes. Well, it's
she can fix all
wonderful.
kinds of weird stuff. So
Uh,
it amazes me, and I'm really thrilled that she shows up every Friday.
I still have my father's Heathkit that he built back in the 60s. It works, and not only does it work, but without even an outside antenna, with just a little tiny one of those little tiny loopy things, I call it my time machine because I can get in Canada, one of the stations that still plays the old Lux Theater, and I can barely get anything else in on it. But if I fiddle around with the dial and I don't care about the snow, I can get in, old 40s music and Lux Theater and other wild stuff on this old Canadian radio station. I'm so excited. I love it. So yeah, I'm always happy to be on your meeting, and I'm sorry to take up any more. I don't want to take any more of your time up, but it's
Well, we'll take
wonderful to
up
be
more of
here.
your time. Where are you located in Jersey?
I'm at the Jersey Shore. I'm down here I'm in a little town called South Toms River, 15 minutes west of the seaside.
Well, we, as a club, we have our museum in Wall Township, which is
I've been
100
there.
on the Parkway. Yeah.
I have been there, and before I got into your museum, I went through the Army Vehicle Museum, and I really thought it was so emotional. I was crying the whole time getting through there. And then when I got into your museum, and saw the old TV cameras, as I mentioned before, I'm a TV producer at TV 21. I haven't produced anything since 2018 was my last TV series that I did, but I produced on there over the years, and I love all that stuff. My father was a videographer, an aerial videographer during World War II at Old Hadley Air Base, and I still have some of his films, but most of them were given to the Library of Congress. So, old cameras, old TV, old movie projectors. I still have my dad's, and they all work.
Well,
So,
not only do we have our museum there, we have our monthly meetings, also at InfoH2 and at Princeton University.
well, I think that's just wonderful. I just love it. Look at that. What is that gorgeous, that thing in the back behind you, that beautiful, it's not a Philips, it's not an old telephone. And what is that? That radio-y thing. What is
Right
that
here?
gorgeous? Yes.
Yeah, it's a Zenith. It's nothing special.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. See, I have a problem when I get around things like that. I start to feel like I'm being pulled through a vortex somewhere into another time, and that's dangerous because I won't want to come back here. Well, thank you for being so hospitable, and I know your museum, and I hope to be up there again sometime.
Well, like I said, we have meetings. You're very welcome to come to a meeting. It's the second Friday of the month. And we also have a repair clinic. If you have anything that you need to be repaired, we'll have
Oh,
that
I
on
only
the
wish.
27th of April.
Okay, well, I'm still looking for that old 7-inch television that Groucho Marx used to be on. If I find one of those, I'll be hauling it up there.
Well, as a commercial, we have JD Auction Services coming up on the 20th of April, and they're in Jackson, not too far from you. Go on 195 and you're right across. And I'm sure you'll find one too.
Well, that's very sweet. Well, thank you so much again. And now I'm just going to mute my mic, and I promise that I will have this looked into, and I will try to get a pick for anybody that wants it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so very much. Take care now, everybody. I'll be here listening to all of you. Bye-bye.
Well, there's 34 people here, 35, and they've all gone mute. Oh, wait a minute. Here comes John Ricolo. He's got something to say, I'm sure.
I recently found a TV on the side of the road from 1987.
Cool.
You found it in 1987 or you just found it now?
I found it recently. It's from 1987.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gotcha.
No, it's
How bad a shape is it in?
it's actually not that bad. I mean, it still works, but the tuner's broken, so I gotta fix it. It's an RCA.
Ah.
It's actually like a color dial. I got the mechanical tuner, and it's you don't see those very often.
No, because about that time is when they started going digital.
Yeah.
Because I remember we had a Systems 3, the triangle shaped one that would fit right in the corner. We had a Systems 3, but I was the remote control for it. My father didn't want to go for the $59 more to get a remote for it, so I was the remote. And that TV lasted quite a while, and it was digital. It had a digital thing, but it was kept on channel 3 because everybody got cable, and you had that stupid, silly push button box with the umbilical cord that you would attach to it. And so much for, having to be the remote control all the time. Because by this time, let's see, that was about 79. So, I wasn't quite up out of the house yet, but I was out working and stuff like that. Or up in my I used to have a room in the attic that I used as my electronic shop and pirate radio station and mixtape maker and all that kind of stuff. And that was back in the days when you did everything with 2 turntables and a cassette deck. And so I graduated real quick from reel to reel to cassettes, especially when they had Dolby and all that. So, but I remember that TV fondly. That had a great picture in it. Then it died. It went to half a picture before we replaced it.
There seems to be some interest in TVs of that era these days. Seems to be coming up in interest on TVs from the late 80s, mid to late 80s, and even in the 70s especially. And I guess that's just an age appropriate thing. To me, 1987 doesn't seem like that long ago, but it was,
Here, I got it.
Oh, there it is.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a nice set. You gonna fix it up, Maddie? Test it?
Yeah, it works. The tuner's just broken. I had it work, like I got one of these transformer things. It's on the back.
Right. Fallon.
And I tried hooking my VCR up to it, and I was fiddling with it for a while. I got it to work for like 1 second. I got to see the VCR interface, and then it just like it went away and it never came back. So
yeah, probably the contacts might be corroded.
Yeah, that's
as long as you could get it to channel 3, you got to nurse it to channel 3 because that's, unless you were like in Philadelphia or something, that was not a used part of the dial.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, Maddie, that's a mechanical tuner, so maybe it needs a little spray of something in there to clean
Yeah,
the contacts.
I gotta get in there and open the tuner up, but I am not looking forward to that.
My classic can of blue stuff.
Blue stuff, right? I remember that stuff.
Blue stuff. I finally used up the last of it about 2 months ago.
Blue shower.
Blue shower, right?
That was blue shower.
Yeah, I think my last can either evaporated or it ran out of air. A lot of times the air just goes out of them, even though you hear it sloshing around in there.
Doesn't that stuff cause cancer in the state of California or something?
Probably
everything
so.
else does.
Everything causes cancer in the state of California.
Yeah,
No, I mean,
luckily I
what
was,
do you use?
luckily I
Seriously,
was
what do you
using,
use for tuner spray today? What can you buy? I mean,
No,
besides the oxid or something, what would you use?
you have to bring the TV out of California and then you can use anything you want. And then,
I think the old tuner
Bring it
cleaners
to, bring it
really
to
work.
Reno, Nevada.
You know, the tuner cleaners that really worked had carbon tetrachloride in them, and which isn't exactly good for you. But you can buy CRC contact cleaner at Walmart. It works pretty good on stuff like that. It's not bad.
Okay.
Of course, you can also get the deoxit stuff from the Keg people.
Mhm.
It just costs a
Yeah,
lot
that
more.
I have.
Yeah, deoxit is expensive, but it's very nice stuff.
I would use that sparingly.
Yeah. Just be careful with the deoxit or anything. Don't get the chemicals on the tuned components like the coils or the transistors in the tuner. You could detune it. You have to be very careful to kind of drop it right where the metal contacts are.
I've also got a SpongeBob TV from I think 2005 that I got to fix up. One of the capacitors in there just decided to start bulging, and you know, that was fun because it happened out of nowhere too. Here, I'll send a picture if I can find it. There it is. All right. I'm gonna hope, because it's not very good quality, but we're gonna see if that. I don't know if you can see. If you look at the one I circled, it's bulging.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. That's a bad one.
Yeah, it's got a voltage problem now. So,
Well, that bolt is good. At least it saves you from having to hunt around with an ESR meter to figure out which one is bad. You know, it gives you the visual cue.
yeah, I was pretty lucky there. You know, I was stupid, and when I first got this thing, I didn't open it up to check if everything was like good. But that was because it had one of those proprietary screws that basically says, "No, we don't want you opening this TV."
Oh, torque screws, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Torx screw, so I had to get a special screw like a special bit for it, and it took like a week to actually get here. Because it only recently started having voltage issues. I turn it on right now, but I'm trying to let it discharge for a little bit before I repair it.
Right.
So I don't accidentally stop my heart.
and if that one decided to start bulging and it's the same age as the other electrolytics in the set, you might want to just recap all those, change out all those electrolytics, because if one is gone, the other ones might not be too far behind. Then you have to go back in there again.
I've just heard that doing a full recap isn't always the best idea when the other ones seem to still be working.
Yeah, I wouldn't do a full, but I might be tempted to do the electrolytics. I mean, a lot of times, I don't know, if you can check the voltages, sometimes on those sets, you know, seems like if there was a 24.5 volt signal, there was a 25 volt cap. You know, whereas if you were going to then replace it, you'd go to 35 or maybe 50, you know, to give a little more headroom, so that you'd only do it once and it would last forever.
The other thing you got to keep in mind, the power supply caps are the ones that take the beating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the one that went bad. The one that was like for the filter or something.
Yeah, it could be a switching power supply. It's transformer this TV. It's, you know, so yeah, they take a big beating. They run at high frequency.
Sounds about right. I don't know, man. When I got this thing, it was working flawlessly, and then it just randomly started having problems. So
Yeah, it looks like a nice set. It should worth be fixing.
Oh no, I'm talking about this one. Look at this thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
It is pretty cool. It was also $200, so I really don't want to like leave it broken.
Wow.
It's pretty rare. And I also have the stupid looking remote.
Wow.
It's really fun. These
Yeah.
Steam TVs were like a huge thing in the early 2000s. I don't know what started that trend, but
Probably
yeah.
easier than a Philco Predicta.
Definitely.
Excellent. You also, Maddie, just some advice that I've heard. If you buy capacitors for it, don't buy the cheapest you could find, like an Amazon ones that are shipped from China in bulk, because I would just go with a better brand name. And if you
Yeah,
can
these-
afford it in like Mauser, order them online.
These ones are from DigiKey.
DigiKey or Mauser, right? Yeah.
Yeah, these are from DigiKey.
Just to kind of save you a lot of like heartburn dealing with that.
Yeah, I do not trust Amazon.
Yeah.
I just bought two just in case, even though I only need one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good luck with that. That's excellent.
Shouldn't be too hard.
No, shouldn't be too bad.
What else?
Maddie, what kind of test equipment do you have? What's on your workbench?
I don't have one at my house. I use the one at my grandparents because my grandpa's a carpenter. So he has a better spot for me to do that because I am not doing this in my room. I have a multimeter in here though somewhere.
Have you mastered soldering?
I'm decent at it. I've rewired a few voice changers, if that counts. You know, I have a practice board from a TV I had to dismantle that I sometimes will practice on.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
But it's the best way to learn a lot. One of the best ways to learn electronics is just to take things apart, especially if you have an old TV, to kind of see how things are kind of oriented in there.
Definitely. I had a Sylvania from like I think the year like 2000 or something that I had to take it apart because it was having issues and it was not, trust me, it was not worth fixing. So somewhere I have that board. It's probably like under my bed or something. But anyway, this is the multimeter that I use. Some guy, I bought that Trinitron from him. He also gave me this. Because I just mentioned that like I was planning on getting a multimeter and he was like, oh, hold on. And this gave me a free multimeter. So that was nice.
That's excellent.
Even the cheap ones will do what you need right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, just don't try to use that to measure the CRT voltage, the anode.
Well, you
know
can try
about
it
that, right, I
once,
hope.
but other than that, you know.
Yeah, there'll be lots of ozone in the shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it smells great.
Smells like money.
Just give me a Simpson 260 any day.
Maddie, I'm curious, what vintages of the televisions are you interested in? Whether you have them?
90s, early 2000s. I want to get some 80s televisions when I get the chance, but not many have popped up near me.
Does the stuff before the 80s not do it for you?
Yeah, not really.
Okay. No, that's interesting. Okay.
I think if I remember correctly, because in the late 80s, 87 or so, 88, I think I bought an NEC, but it wasn't a television anymore. It was a NEC video monitor. You know, and it was a great set actually. I think it was a 1987. It was stereo, had a good amplifier, and it even had connectors on the back where you could use external speakers. So, you know, you could hook up, you didn't need, you know, some 3.1, 5.1, 7.1 sound bar thing, because those didn't exist yet, but it had enough grunt in its onboard stereo amplifier to drive external speakers if you didn't want to listen to the internal ones. Remember, I brought it home, hooked it up, and the very first thing I saw, when the historians will help me place the date, the first thing I watched on the TV as I turned it on, the news was on, because we had just bombed Libya in, like, I think it was 87 or 88.
That was 86. Yeah, I remember that.
86. Okay, 86. I was like, oh, great, I got a brand new TV just in time to watch World War III. You know?
My
I
brother
bought
ran
one of those
five.
NECs too, and it was actually a pretty interesting TV. It worked really, really well. You could almost do dental surgery on it,
Yep.
at least by comparison to what I had been watching.
It was,
I thought it really arrived with that.
it was the first TV that I ever owned that didn't have any horizontal or vertical, you know, controls on it, because it magically always was in sync.
Mhm.
My brother ran fighter cover for refueling on the for the F-111s on that
Wow.
raid.
Wow.
And since France wouldn't let them fly over France, and
Right,
they
I
had to
remember
come
that.
around,
Yeah.
they accidentally put 2 paveways into the French embassy's parking lot after they warned them. And the next day, the French ambassador was sitting in the Secretary of State's office going, "Why are you guys doing this?" And whoever the guy was that was working for Reagan, he said, "Next time, let us fly over your country."
Now, I do remember that was one of the things they mentioned in the news broadcast when I turned on the TV.
That was not
that
by accident.
we did not, we couldn't fly through the French airspace.
We lost one F-111 that they never found because they had flown extra long, but they had plenty of fuel. They had another one that was pretty shot up, and so they busted into Libyan airspace with the KC-135 and hooked onto it to pour fuel into it. And I mean, the Libyans don't fly at night, and it wasn't going to start World War III. They were just a bunch of 2-bit third world countries.
Yeah, no, but I was, you know, I was 20 something, or
Yeah.
I know I was less than 30
Yeah.
years old at the time, and it was this.
It's one of those stories that like the Hal Marcos, when he was flying out of Clark in the before 85, and Marcos supposedly left the country. Actually, he was kidnapped by U.S. and Filipino special forces and hauled to Guam, and Danny flew fighter cover so rogue units out of the Philippines wouldn't try to go get him. What really happens and what the news says is a lot of times very two different things.
That fellow who did fighter covering, was he a relative of yours, a brother, you said?
He was a brother. He retired as a light bird in 1997, about 2,300 hours in F-4s and F-16s. Did a lot of no-fly over Iraq, and then did a good bit of work out of Avianto in Italy back into Bosnia during the crap that was going on there. So
wow. So what was he flying during the Libya raid? Was he flying
F-4s? He was flying F-4s,
Wow.
F-4E2s there, and they had gone down to someplace, I can't think, Amianto, and then, you know, the tankers were going in and because they had top off the F-111s right before they busted Lib airspace, and but you know, just another day at the office, killing terrorists and saving democracy. They had business cards set up like that.
Cool.
Call us if you need your democracy saved.
I was just, you know, it was just amazing that, I mean, I had every other TV that was in the house up until that one was, I think the newest set I had was probably a 1968 RCA color TV with a CTC 35 chassis and vacuum tubes in it. And I was living in Massachusetts, and I drove up to New Hampshire so I could buy this NEC video monitor and not pay the Massachusetts sales tax to buy it. And then dragged it back home and just set it up in the middle of the living room on the floor. I didn't even know exactly where I was going to put it yet. And
It's so cool today. I mean, you can't even,
nobody fixes anything anymore or repairs anything anymore. You just go get a new one. And we've got TVs that are so good. I mean, you can see they show the old TV shows and stuff, and like Gunsmoke and Bonanza was filmed with Panavision 70 millimeter. So the original TVs were always cutting off the corners and stuff like that. And you see all the where the hands are stuck in to move things and stuff that we never saw as a kid, or the detail is so good.
Mm.
And you know, that didn't mean that the shows were ever that great, but
yeah, I was mostly blown away, not so much from the picture, but from the sound, because it was a stereo TV and it had really good sound. And you know, the audio was, you know, I mean, most of the TV sets had little 3x5s or maybe a 5x7 kind of speaker, you know, even if it was a decent piece of furniture from the 60s.
Those are the days that if you had a quality color TV set, good looking girls would come over to your house to watch TV, you know. Or if you had a typewriter, they'd come over. I tried to give a typewriter to my niece in 1991, and she said, "What would I do with it? Put it against the door to hold it open?"
You have to tell her it's an antique word processor, and then maybe she would take it.
I shudder to think how far we'll go in the next 30 years.
I might add something about the NEC TV.
Sorry. Continue.
Go ahead if you want to, Maddie. I was just going to add something about the NEC TVs that they had as a feature.
Oh, no, you can finish.
Well, back, this had to be late 80s or early 90s. NEC home TVs had an honest to goodness digital noise reducer in it. And they had them in the stores like Circuit City, but the salesman had no idea what it was for. But there was a knob on the front panel it had a recursive noise reducer. And what you could do with the home set, a friend of mine had one of them where I first saw this work. If you just put your finger on the antenna lead of that set and you select a channel and you had a noisy picture, it's maybe not even watchable. And then you'd flip on that noise reducer feature in the set, and since it was recirculating video frames or fields, it would cause some lag, but it would smooth the noise out to where it was a very watchable picture. And it was a remarkable feature, but you had to kind of know how it worked and know when to use it. So they also made a VHS VCR, and I bought one thinking that I could use the digital noise reducer in that to reduce the noise on VHS tapes, which it would have done if they had hooked it up, but they didn't. It was only on the TV side. So if you were recording off the air onto the VHS VCR, you could use that digital noise reducer feature and improve the signal and noise on a weak station. But I'll tell you, if they had taken that noise reducer and put it over so you could use it on the playback video side, that would have been a really hot sales feature. But again, nobody knew it was there. They didn't really understand, I don't think, how it worked. And it just, with at least to me, the NEC TVs went away, but they were a great product. They, to my knowledge, were the first company to build digital equipment for broadcasters that would let you reduce the size and move the image around on a screen, a compressed picture size, and move it around. And they had those at some trade show in Japan. Panasonic was showing a switcher that had that feature in it, and the marketing manager for Grass Valley Group was at that show, and he said, "We got to have that." So he investigated, and it turned out NEC owned all the patents. So for years, Grass Valley bought digital signal processing frames from NEC to do their video special effects, and just packaged them with their products. But it was like racks of stuff to do that. But anyway, that little board that was inside the VHS VCR and the TV was quite a little gadget. And I wish more people would have picked up on that.
You spoke about the audio quality. One of the big deals when stereo TV came out was all of a sudden the bandwidth got much better. I worked at a couple of TV stations, well, actually 3 or 4 of them back in the 1960s when TV was mono, and they all had filters on their main audio chain, which was mono, of course, at 6 kilohertz. So there's nothing over 6K that came out of it. And I asked at one place why they did that, and they told me that it was because so much of the programming was on film, 16 millimeter film with an optical soundtrack, that it was too jarring to go from that to a videotape that had decent frequency response. So they intentionally limited the frequency response. And when they went to the DBX Zenith stereo system, all of a sudden that opened up. So that was pretty dramatic all by itself.
That's interesting. They would do that, Chuck. The networks went 15 up until 1978. All the TV audio in the country was distributed over 5 kilohertz telephone lines, and and in 78 they put FM subcarriers on the video channel, so you could get 2 channels of 15 kilohertz audio.
Yeah, when they started going to satellite distribution, that changed a lot too, because before it all came from AT&T. I mean, you know, at the stations I worked at, if you lost the network, you called AT&T right away and they'd fix it. But that's where it came from. It was just a patch bay sitting there. And, you know, like you say, it was very limited audio. So that's why most TVs had a 4-inch loudspeaker in it and no tone controls or anything. That's all there was.
So, hey, Chuck, what is that stereo receiver? Is that a Kenwood behind you?
No, it's a Marantz. It's a 2015, I think it's called. So
probably cost about $700 or $800 in the late 70s.
Maybe a 2215.
Yeah, it's a 20. Let's see.
2215B.
No, it says 2015 on it.
Wow, 2015.
Push the button.
Okay, at 20 watts per channel.
She said. Works. Now it's lit up so you can see the pretty blue lights. I bought it at a garage sale a few years ago. I actually have several of them, but they're kind of fun. They go for stupid money these days, which just amazes me because they're a good tuner. I mean, it's a fine piece of equipment, but I just question whether they're really worth what they charge, because, you know, frankly, a working Panasonic, or not Panasonic, but a Pioneer or a Kenwood or something like that sounds about the same, really. And I was an audio guy for 40 years, so maybe I just don't know. Maybe my ears are burned out. Who knows?
Well, there's a lot of the form factor and, you know, the horizontal wheel for the tuning mechanism. You know, it's just kind of sexier than a Kenwood or a Pioneer.
Are all those companies still in business?
Well, sort of. The names exist. Let's put it that way. Kenwood's still around. Kenwood is actually Trio Electronics that makes 2-way radios and stuff under the Kenwood name these days. But they make a lot of stuff. And I know that you can buy, Best Buy, I think, sells Kenwood, and I'm not sure who owns Pioneer these days, but I think it still exists. But the stuff isn't the same. It's, you know, cheap and, you know, meant to be disposable. There's no longer discrete components in the thing. It's all ICs. Even the output device is what's called an STK chip. And it is what it is. And they put the same one in everybody's radio, so they're all the same for pretty much, you know, except for the way it looks.
They all sound so much better than the digital stuff today.
I think so.
My opinion.
Mine too. But I mean, the digital stuff is amazing. I mean, you can buy an amplifier from Parts Express, for instance, under the brand name of LePay, L-E-P-A-I, for $20. And it puts out about 20 watts a channel, and it sounds pretty good. It's got bass and treble controls, and what's not to like? But it's $20. You throw it away. Nobody would ever open one up to fix it, you know. So actually, we use a lot of those at the museum. They work quite well, but they're $20 for a stereo amplifier. Who would have thought it?
Chuck, I bought one of those Marantz quadraphonic 4230s when they first came out, and I knew the dealer, so I got it at the dealer price, which was a little over $400.
They were
back
very
in
expensive.
1972. My dad practically had a fit when he says, "You paid $400 for a radio?"
Yeah, well, hey, Bose sells it. It will sell you a nice kitchen table radio for $500, mail
Yeah.
order. So, but yeah, that was actually a good buy. And those quad machines are very sought after. We've got a 4400, I think it's called, that somebody gave me a long time ago, sat in my attic for years. And one day I was up there in the attic. I thought I ought to get this thing down and play with it and see what's wrong with it. And it turned out there's a lot wrong with it. But we have a 1970s room at the Texas Broadcast Museum these days, complete with Betamax and Atari machines and a mirror ball and a quadraphonic stereo and a whole bunch of other weird stuff, lava lamps, things like that. People really react to it, though. It's amazing. They think that's pretty cool.
My son spent $3,800 for a gaming desktop, and I almost had a cow.
It's pretty exciting, but on the other hand, I think the first computer, well, I ran my business in Dallas off of a Tandy system that worked on CP/M, and we had Wise terminals. I think we must have had $20,000 in it. I remember the 10 megabyte hard drive was $3,500. 10 megabytes. It was about the size of a cigar box too. So, the hard drive was pretty crazy stuff. But we ran it for about 10 years. It worked okay.
Chuck, I thought it was interesting your comment that the TV broadcasters thought it was unsettling going back and forth between the audio bandwidth. So that was their rationale to keep it bottlenecked at 5 kilohertz, because today they have no problem going from a talk show at normal dialogue like us right now and then go to ads at brick-walled compression.
Yeah, well, that's something the digital age has brought us, is compression like you can't believe. Multi-band compressors that squash the crap out of everything, to the point of listener fatigue by my standards. And radio is the same way. I mean, radio stations think they got to be really loud to be really heard. And it's like, no, I don't think so. Just me.
Hey, I got a question for John Riccolo.
Yes.
Did you bring enough for everybody?
It's really good. It's Aldi's tropical. Where's the camera? Tropical trail mix. Dave, how you doing? How you feeling?
Let's take that conversation offline. I'm still.
I'm sorry. I didn't even know you were here tonight. I didn't realize you were on the call. Just one quick thing, since you accidentally gave me the floor. Here's a silly little show and tell item. Here's a television set. You don't see this TV every day. This is from Dollar Tree. So here's an authentic Dollar Tree TV. Ceramic, made in China. I guess it was supposed to be a piggy bank, but they forgot to put a slit in the top. There you go.
Well, it's nice that it's a porthole.
Yeah, it is. It has that look. It has the look. Yeah, Dollar Tree. Yeah. Now it's $1.25, I guess.
Does everybody know the story about why we have radios in cars? That whoever was Lear or whatever the guy's name was, and he and another guy who were taking their girlfriends out to go parking. And one of the girls said, it'd really be great if we could listen to radio music out here.
I did just get a copy of that article. It wasn't Lear, but it was two guys. I read it a couple of days ago. It was from a car club that I belong to, but somebody had forwarded that along.
Well, Lear was one of the founders of Motorola.
It was Lear, and the wiki page for Motorola covers that whole subject in quite good detail.
And he later brought us the 8-track tape player.
I was going to say, it started as a 4-track, I think.
Well, that was different. Those were actually broadcast Fidelipac cartridges, and Madman Earl Muntz.
Muntz, that was it. Muntz.
Something about a Muntz TV.
Yeah.
When I worked at the TV shop in high school, my boss used to say, months. Yeah, that's how long it lasts, a couple of months. And that was pretty much accurate. But he came out with a 4-track tape player using the same kind of cartridges that radio stations used, a Fidelipac cartridge, except he ran it at 3 3/4 rather than 7.5, and filled it up with tape, and you could get a side of an album on it. They actually worked pretty good. I had one, back about 1965 in my 66 Mustang. And I later changed it out for a Motorola 8-track, which didn't work anywhere near as well. But that was, Lear sold a whole bunch more of them than Earl Muntz ever did.
How did you afford a 66 Mustang in 1966?
They were pretty cheap, actually. I was making pretty good money. I was in college, but I was working in TV stations at the same time. And I paid $2,557 tax title license that included white wall tires, AM radio, and an air conditioner.
Ooh, AC.
AC, yeah. Well, in Texas, you need that.
Yeah, was
I
it?
mean,
What radio
was it-
stations did you
was it
work
a
for down here in
six-cylinder or
Dallas?
Was it a 289?
I was just
Radio, I worked at KRLD. I
Okay.
actually mostly was at TV stations. I worked the original channel 33, which is called KMEC TV. And then I went to KRLD and then to KTVT channel 11. And I also ran the student radio station at SMU when I was a student.
There's talk KRLD has pushed over and 1080 or 820 over in Fort Worth. They're both, running FM simulcast, and there's talk about them maybe not continuing their AM side.
I have heard that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess we'll find out. But most people don't listen to AM radio, even if they have one. And the car manufacturers tried to take them out, and that made a real stench. I own 2 AM stations and an FM station, so I would like to see them kept, although I don't think anybody really listens to AM. They listen to the FM translators that are associated with those AM stations. And frankly, someday the FCC may say, okay, guys, if you turn in your AM license, we'll let you keep the FM translator. And I will bet if that happens, a lot of people will do that.
Well, as a teenager in the early 70s to 1979 or 80 when I got out of college, we would the clear channel stations nationwide, the one out of Minnesota or Minneapolis, and there was one in Denver, there was Fort Worth, Dallas, San Antonio, WNOE, and New Orleans, and and of course then there was the WLS out of Chicago that used to was a heavy rock station. And once in 1992, my parents were over in Shreveport going to doctor's appointments, and we went to a station called Keel, Keel, at 710. And I went in there and I told them about, because they were nothing but talk radio, I told them about in the day when they used to be the rock station in the Arklatex area. And they had a broadcast, a booth place kind of sticking out over Spring Street.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls in their Trans Ams and stuff would run up and down the street, and they called it the Fox Report. And these people were just all mystified. Is that, you mean we used to be that famous? And I said, everybody knew who Keel was, Mr. Weather. And
I used to listen to it, but in Dallas in the wintertime, I'd listen to WLS out of Chicago. Came in fine. I had a preset on my car radio on my 66 Mustang. It came in fine. But are you from Dallas, Tom?
I live in Coppell.
Coppell, okay. Well, oddly, a fellow named Tom Burrows used to work for me in Dallas.
Well, it wasn't me. I started out at Texas Instruments back when it was the place to be.
Okay, I figured it wasn't the same one. He actually worked in my sound company for a while. But good guy.
Yeah, I had this girlfriend that, I'd come from East Texas where you had one radio station to listen to. It was the local Hicks station in the town.
We got both kinds of music. We got country and we got Western.
But anyway, you could listen to Keel. And then I came up to Dallas, and this girl that I was going out with, she was constantly pounding the changes of the station. You probably remember 103.7 with what's his face that I can't think, he's dead now.
KVIL with Ron Chapman.
Ron Chapman. Yeah, you know what? He was so famous that one time he asked for people just to send him money for a project, and $30,000 showed up.
And they did. So they did the right thing and gave it to charity. But people, whatever Ron Chapman told you to do, people would do it. he was the king of morning radio in Dallas for a long time.
99.5 is the big FM country and western station now.
Yeah,
And
KPLX, I guess that is. Had Tom
whatever
Dorsey.
the guy that used to be on a TV show in this 90s or something is an ex-astronaut that does. Well, anyway, it's a pretty we're the #4 market in the country. We're the #4 metro market, and we're coming up fast on Chicago because they're losing people. But this is a wonderful place to be for as television and radio, just to listen to stuff.
Well, there's a lot of stuff there. When I moved to East Texas,
where'd you go to East Texas?
Well, I'm near Kilgore.
Well, I was from Center.
Okay, well, not too far away, but when I got out here 20 years ago, I had a sound company in Dallas, and that's what I did for 35 years or so. And I sold it and moved out to East Texas, and the radio out here just really sucked. And I remember my mother was from Henderson, and I'd go visit an aunt, uncle, and grandmother in Henderson periodically, and the only thing I could listen to was Keel out of Shreveport.
Until 6:30 or whenever they powered down because they weren't a Clear Channel station.
Well, I could still pick them up at night, sort of. It wasn't as good, but it sure beat KGRI in Henderson, where we
How about KDET in Center Texas?
Well, probably the same thing.
It was horrible.
Yeah, well, there's some pretty strange stuff out here. I mean, I remember hearing some really strange commercials that, like there was one that was that has stuck in my mind for 40 years now, that something to the effect, if you got one of them cars with them aluminum heads on it, and you don't got to go to Shreveport no more to get it fixed, because old Harry's got a place down on Highway 79 and he'll fix you right up. Oh, by the way, tell Harry that he's got a pretty nice new sign. He'd really appreciate it if you tell him that.
Well, he probably could fix those cars.
Well, he could, apparently. But I mean, it was pretty primitive here.
There was this lady called Maddie Dellinger out of Center that was kind of like the local historian, and so what they did to kind of cover all the thing is they hired this black guy to do a 2-hour black show in the afternoon, and then they hired this historian lady, Maddie Dellinger, and her thing was called the Party Line, and for 3 hours people would just call in and talk about stuff, whatever they wanted to talk about.
Yep. Did you ever listen to Swap and Shop?
Yeah.
Got myself a real pretty 83 Buick out here. It's really, really good. Got a real nice interior. Of course, it ain't got no motor, but other than that, it's a really fine car. Can't believe nobody's called me about it.
Chuck, you mentioned about the demise of AM. Maybe I'm one of the few people that still listen to it, mostly a hobby at night in the winter when you really can't go out and do much anyways, other than snowblow up here in Michigan. But when I got my first set that had multiple filters in it, I thought I was in heaven. I bought from Universal Radio, which just the proprietors retired and closed it, I think, only a year or two ago. But I bought a used low Europa, and it had 4 filters in it. And that model was designed by John Thorpe. And anyways, I'm not a real big fan of German electronics. I think they're quite disappointing overall. But what surprised me is British electronics are pretty good. And I was in heaven when I got that probably 25, 30 years ago with 4 bandwidth choices. Nowadays, for $99, you can get a Sangen with 5 filters, but they're all DSP. I think it's all chip on a radio on a chip. But SI Labs, I think they do the filtering in the audio domain. But you're right. From what I've read, most of the noise on the AM band is being generated from these switching power supplies that are ubiquitous everywhere for every device nowadays. And I think it makes sense. What do you think? What do you guys think? To move the AMs up to FM, expand the FM band at the low end, get rid of channel 5 and 6 TV, analog TV, and expand the FM band.
That's been proposed a lot. The FCC is definitely against it. I mean, they're crazy about it, in fact, being against it. The weird thing is the radios are kind of already exist, because in Japan they go down to 70 megahertz. This wouldn't be that hard. Of course, you'd have to wait for most radio listening is in a car. So, if you've got a car that's going to last you 10 years and it won't tune that low, then you're SOL. Now, most radios today are software-defined radios anyway in your car, so it could be fixed pretty easily. Nobody seems to want to do it, and radio has become the land of the really over-leveraged. I don't know what do we call these investment groups? Like the Soros group is buying up as much as they can from iHeart, Cumulus, and Odyssey, which are the three biggest chains of radio.
Didn't iHeart go bankrupt?
Oh, several times.
Oh, okay.
They go bankrupt every 3 weeks, whether they need to or not, and they get rid of more people and wonder why nobody's listening. But no, all these things, all those companies are bankrupt or have gone through bankruptcy, and several groups are buying them, which is a little scary because if they've got a political agenda, then that may be what you hear on the radio. Not that you don't already hear it, but it's a little scary.
I just know that the AM on my 2015 or 16 Ford Flex is useless unless you're parked at the base of the tower.
Really? A lot of AM radios are deaf as a post, which is
just
too bad.
awful. And most of the interference is generated from all of the electronics that are in the vehicle.
Yeah.
It's a much better radio if you just get in the car and just turn the key to the on position. It's
well, there's probably 20 computers inside your car, maybe more.
Right.
And they're spewing out noise. And then even LED stoplights. There's one intersection I go through all the time that just obliterates radio.
Yep.
They're buying cheap LEDs from China or something. There's no filtering.
The funniest thing was a few years back, since a few years ago, I was still living up north, but I have moved down south since then. But when they went to the LED lights on the traffic lights up north, they were totally ineffective in the winter because it was the incandescent bulbs in the traffic lights that melted the snow off of the traffic lights. And when they went to LEDs that didn't heat up enough to melt the snow, they just got covered up with snow, and then they had no traffic lights.
That's funny. I noticed that as well in the winter. I said, how come these lights are so full of snow? But yeah, right, good point. That's right. They don't have incandescents.
I hadn't thought of that, but that's, even tower lighting for radio stations, they're trying to encourage everybody to go to LED lighting for the tower. And I wonder what's going to happen when it gets really cold and snowy.
The traffic light companies are now including heaters in the red section that have a thermostat. So when it gets
wouldn't it be cheaper just to use the old lights instead of putting a heater in there?
Yeah, but I think that's called the law of unintended consequences.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah, that's it makes well. It wouldn't be green though, so there you go.
So will there ever be a time when we don't broadcast over the air? Because I don't know of anybody that gets TV over the air. They claim to advertise digital things and stuff. The one time we tried it, it was like half the channels wouldn't come in, and this, that, and the other.
Well, it depends on what market you are in and how far you away from the antennas.
Yeah, it does. I can get about 38 or 40 channels off air.
Myself included.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there. A lot of it's duplicated. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them that are the same channel all over again. Usually the nostalgia type channels. But I don't think it's going to go away. But I wouldn't really want to be in the TV broadcasting business at this point. Radio has its place in cars because it works there, and it's pretty low tech and doesn't take a lot of trouble. I bought a new car last summer, and the amount of tech in it is just insane.
So how much does it cost? Aren't TV over the air, aren't they pushing 100,000 watts?
No.
Well, how
I
much
don't.
does it cost to run the transmitter just on electricity?
Oh, well, a lot. No kidding. It's a bunch. But the digital is more efficient. It doesn't need as much power. So there is that savings.
I was just I'm of the age as probably most of us on the call where I grew up in a home where the TV that was so big that it took two people to pick it up and move it had an antenna on it, and the telephone in the kitchen that my mom spoke on was hardwired to the wall, and she had to have the long cord on the handset to be able to stir the sauce on the stove in the kitchen.
No, she had the phone in a place that was had been designed into house where you put the phone.
Yeah, but it was, it was the phone. The thing was the small phone was hardwired to the wall, and the big TV had an antenna on it. We had it totally backwards. Now the TV is hardwired, and the phone is wireless. It's just totally reversed itself.
Well, the problem with the doing all streaming is when the internet doesn't work.
Oh yeah.
Which happens a lot, actually.
Oh, yeah.
That's not unusual. It's way better than it used to be, for sure. But it sometimes fails, and it also can be geofenced and blocked and all kinds of things like that. It wouldn't, I would guess that some 19-year-old kids wearing black T-shirts in their mom's basement could screw up your streaming system if they felt like it. They probably just haven't discovered that as being a lot of fun. It's much more fun to do something else. But with radio, one of the problems is the music licensing. If you're talk radio, you don't have to deal with this too much. But if you are a radio station that streams, and I am, it costs me 0.24 cents per song per listener, which doesn't sound like a lot. But if you got a couple hundred listeners, all of a sudden it's a lot of money.
How do they measure the listeners?
Your streaming service, whoever whoever is, usually you hire somebody that is specializes in doing this, and they've got software that can do it. So the catch is you got to figure it out, because it will tell you how many people listen to every commercial, how many people listen to every jingle, every song. But I get a report.
They ask the Chinese. They know. They have it all.
Oh yeah, well, they know. But there's usually a hosting company of some kind that's on some kind of big server farm somewhere or other, and they have software that can figure it out. When it first started, you were on your own to figuring it out, which it's still. Well, I use a company that figures it out for me, so I don't have to deal with it, because I was wasting at least 2 business days a month trying to sort out the report and send the money into a company called Sound Exchange, which is really a quote nonprofit, nonprofit organization that distributes this money to people who wrote the music. And there's also ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and Global Music Rights. You also have to deal with those too. A friend of mine down the street from me, I helped him produce a gospel music album about 10 years ago, maybe not that long ago. And I have on one of my radio stations, I have a gospel brunch on Sunday morning. It's basically kind of bluegrass more than anything else, gospel music for 4 hours, and he's on it. He's actually was pretty good. The album came out nicely. He called me up one day and said, "Chuck, are you in your office?" I said, "Yeah, come on down." So he came down the street to me and came in and said, "I got my first Sound Exchange check. I'm so excited. It's 3 cents." I said, he couldn't figure out if he wanted to cash it or frame it. I said, "Frame it."
Chuck, do you know the ratio of people that listen to you over the air versus streaming?
No, I really don't, because I refuse to pay for the Nielsen ratings. That's outrageous too. They'll tell me how many people listen to the radio stations if I pay them $36,000 a year, and I'm going, no. And they do tell me that the higher rated stations pay more, which really makes me suspicious.
Well, they don't do ratings anymore. I mean, by
Yeah.
people filling out stuff, don't they just like monitor what's going out to people through the
No,
cable
well,
system?
some places like Dallas, they use what they call a PPM, which is a people meter, and they give you a little thing. It's kind of like looks like a pocket pager, and it's listening to what you're listening to, and there's an encoded signal in there that it's sensitive to, and that tells them how many people are actually listening. In our market, which is market 148 or 142, I'm not sure which, they still use a book. And they send you a $5 bill and you're supposed to fill this thing out. It's not very accurate because people just fill out whatever they feel like. For instance, a few years ago, there was a station that went off the air. It's still off the air. It's gone. They made the ratings for the next 2 years. The accuracy is not very good.
What is that thing on the internet that listens to everything in your house?
Alexa or something like that?
We don't have that because I don't want people listening to what goes on in my house.
I don't want one either. I don't have an Alexa or any of those kind of things, and I just really don't want it. It's bad enough I think my phone listens because I can be thinking about something and it seems like all of a sudden I start getting spammed with ads for things.
Well, back in the 90s, I had a friend that was a big ham type person, all that stuff, and he pointed out to me that some military gear like the Marines and stuff, Navy, their ship to shore stuff was setting on the same frequencies that people's remote telephones were. And there was actually a guy that was on the school board for Dallas Independent School District that was talking on his phone, and he made some off-colored remarks about this, that, and the other, and somebody had reported it, and they used it to kick him out of office. And you think, well, you can't even talk on your phone, without somebody listening to you.
I don't think privacy is a big deal these days for people, for these companies. I mean, they're listening, and I mean, I think it's a real problem personally. But hey, this conversation may come back and kick us in the butt. You never know.
Well,
it's being recorded right now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is being recorded.
You mentioned that there's the ability when radio or if everything was through the internet, there's the ability to bottleneck it at will, depending on power, power brokers in control. On Thursday this week, I think it was Newsmax, I read an article about that same concept with respect to money, and that the federal government wants to go to cyber currency. And in that regard, other countries that have done it, like China, their political adversaries, they can turn them off, bankrupt them. You can't make your house payment. It's scary to have everything on one path.
I think it's scary enough just saving what's on your hard drive to the cloud. I mean,
I don't do that.
I don't either. What is the cloud? But I mean,
some farm someplace, and there's an online newspaper down in Center that they've taken all the pictures from the last parades, homecoming and stuff for the last 25 years. And so people don't save this stuff. And then suddenly their server farm in France burned down, and 20 plus years of, because everybody goes, well, that was my daughter in 2004. Well, did you download the video or the picture? No. I back up to external hard drives and switch them out of the safety deposit box. And then I have one that I switch out with a relative in the Kilgore area once a year.
You need to come see us in Kilgore. A friend of mine writes a newspaper column. It's just a fun column. It's mostly nostalgia, but he's on about 40 different newspapers, and he started doing podcasts of all these things. And we were talking about running the podcasts on the radio. Why not? Because they're amusing, and they're about 2 minutes long. And we're just getting ready to do that. And the server farm that he was storing all the podcasts on went out of business. And they're all gone. He didn't back them up. I can't believe he didn't back them up. I thought he was smarter than that.
Well, the electric power supply company that comes into like Shelby County and stuff, but not Nacogdoches County, is not connected to the Texas grid.
Right.
And so they actually have a lot cheaper electricity. And I've tried to talk to the home folks in Center about getting some server farms and stuff. And these people are just effing morons down there, to be honest with you. That's why I
Well,
left.
Yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, that I can understand that. We had we're on an electric cooperative where I am right now. In Kilgore, they're on part of the grid though. So, and SWEPCO, who runs that, seems to think reliable power is an option.
We had SWEPCO as a kid, and then one time the transformer blew up, and the whole town didn't have power for 2 days. And I was immediately down there with a generator to run the air conditioning and stuff for Mom, because she also was getting oxygen out of a machine. And
Yeah, right. Well, Kilgore, I think it was last spring, might have been a year ago, but at any rate, we lost power for almost 4 days.
You have a generator?
Oh yeah, we got generators, but it was a real problem for a lot of people. And lightning hit the substation that fed the whole city and blew it up real good.
Didn't it snow down there in Texas last winter? And then
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago,
that was 2021 in
they called that
February.
Snowmageddon. That was really bad, actually. I never lost power where I am, but even so, I had my house flooded courtesy of I put a fire sprinkler system in the house when we built it, because we were at the time a long way away from a fire station. Now there's one about a mile away from me, but when we moved out here, there weren't. It was 7 or 8 miles. So I put this fire sprinkler system in, which they use CPVC pipe in. And well, after about 20 years, that pipe gets brittle and it froze just enough to where it flooded the house. Cost my insurance company about $150,000, really.
Wow.
I mean, to fix it. We lived in a trailer for about 3 months, and I supervised the deal, but I mean, that was a nightmare. And that happened to a lot of people around here.
On average, 2,300 people nationwide are killed in house fires. There has never been a documented death of a person in a house that had a sprinkler system, but yet the housing industry is against this, that we, using real pipe and that kind of stuff, not, junk. And
well,
that's
when you
difference.
when you go put a real system in, and we had to at the Texas Broadcast Museum, that cost $60,000 to do it.
Is that in Kilgore?
Yes,
okay.
It is right downtown. It costs $60,000 and another $6,000 to have the thing connected up to the water system from the city. So it was pretty expensive. The one in my house wasn't that expensive, which is why I did it. That same freeze that you're talking about, one of the pipes broke at the museum, and luckily not much was damaged, but it broke. And we have an annex building where we store stuff, and one broke there too at the same time.
My house was built in 2005, and it has the sprinkler system. I think Arizona, maybe for 2 years, had the requirement for new construction to have sprinklers, but the housing industry put the kibosh on it. But
it's one of those things that seemed like a good idea, but it hasn't worked out that way for me anyway. Now your mileage may vary. I mean, I really can't tell you, but mine is now capped off because it broke once again. This time, it didn't do any major damage.
Just put in smoke alarms and run outside when there's a fire.
I have smoke alarms all over the place and fire extinguishers. So I think that's, it would have been just as easy if the house had burned, to be perfectly honest with you, with the amount of damage that it did.
If there's a need to run heat, say in Texas, how do people do it? Heat pumps or resistance heating? Because I don't think a heat pump will work below 43 degrees.
Gas furnaces is what we use.
Well, if you've got gas, then gas is the way to go, because it's cheap and plentiful. If you don't have gas, where I am, we don't. We have heat pumps, and they have a resistive backup.
You don't have a propane tank?
I do where I am right here. But I'm at the radio station right now, but I don't at the house. For aesthetic reasons, we didn't want a propane tank. We could have done it that way, but I'm also told by the HVAC people that when you run them on propane, the propane corrodes the heater a lot, and you all of a sudden find you're replacing it rather rapidly. So there's good, bad, and different here. The heat pumps are, when they're working right, and they work below 30 to 40 degrees now. They've got it so they're not real efficient, but at least they work. But at any rate, it kicks into electric heat, which gives you a pretty special electric bill. But luckily, it's only for a day or two.
Isn't that what really brought the grid down when the need arose?
Could be. I mean, some of it was a whole bunch of things didn't work, and it was probably the demand. Although our demand in the summertime is pretty big around here, because when it's 110 degrees, everybody's got their air conditioning running.
Yeah,
full
but the
tilt.
natural gas wells don't freeze up at 110, and that was where the power went out to that, which shut down the gas that was going to the turbine generator stations, the peak demand stuff, and that's where it went crazy.
Yeah. Well, it was one of those snowball kind of things. And
245 people or so died because people did things like, oh, let me put my barbecue grill in my garage.
Oh yeah, well, there's no
can't
lack
fix stupid.
No, you can't. And I can give you a great example of it. They've been working on the street. We're on Main Street in Kilgore, and they've been working on it for 3 years, trying to repave it and stuff. And they finally did the final pour right in front of our museum building on Thursday, which was, I was hopeful this would be great, because we had an event today with about 60 people in it. And we're going, where are people going to park? How are they going to get across this thing? Within 2 hours of the time they poured the concrete, somebody drove across it and tore it up. So they're going to have to dig it all up, do it all over again. And they've used our parking lot as a shortcut to get to the side street. And their Suburban got cement all over it. And I think karma will be a bitch on this one, because I hope it got in their brakes or something. I mean, you can see a trail across our parking lot, which we had resurfaced just less than a year ago, so it looked nice. But now there's a trail of tracks. Actually, 2 different cars have done this now in that length of time. I mean, I can't believe people are that stupid. But
so do you provide website support for people down there?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I did websites at one time when I first moved here for the Classic Car Club of America and for something called Lake Cherokee, which is where I live. But no, I don't do that.
You live down on Lake Cherokee?
I live near it. I live on the south side of Lake Cherokee, yes.
Okay, on 149?
Well, I'm actually on County Road 2127, but that's if Lake Cherokee is kind of a horseshoe-shaped lake,
yeah.
And I'm on the inside of the horseshoe on the south side of it.
It's a cooling lake for the SWEPCO Knox Lee plant.
Yeah, among other things. Yeah, it's also the water supply for Longview. And I don't know. It's a nice neighborhood, actually. I like it here. I don't live on the lake. I live just south of it, though. It actually says Chalk Hill.
Yeah.
But
a guy named Scotty Kilmore has a YouTube channel. He's a mechanic that worked out of his house in Houston, but I think he's moved east now, but he still makes weekly videos. And in the last week, he showed one where one of these automated cars that makes deliveries or something, it just got cameras doing its navigation. It did the very same thing you're talking about, Chuck. It drove into wet cement and it got, stuck in it. And these cars have run into fire trucks, police cars, too much technology.
I write software for a living, and I wouldn't ride in a car with software that I wrote to save my life.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, frankly. And I don't know how good your software is, but I know that whoever wrote the software in my Chrysler Pacifica should have been drawn and quartered. It's just, you get a glitch in it, and all of a sudden something doesn't work.
Going back to the contrast between narrowband and wideband audio, I heard of somebody who years back had a radio program playing old 78 and shellac records, and he had a disc with a quiet groove that he would play in the background while he was doing the announcing. So it evened out the noise level between his announcing and the records, and it was actually quite effective.
That's ingenious. You know, that way you wouldn't notice. Yeah, I guess they could have put a pink noise generator in at the TV station that had the filters, but they didn't.
So how did in the days when they would press the wax copies, you know, like I've got some YouTube stuff on Glenn Miller where, you know, they're doing the Shaw Valley thing or whatever, and they go to a wax copy. How many copies of records could they get off of that before they had to make another one? Or
just this week, there was a visit to a mastering studio by the Audio Engineering Society on Zoom, and they said that you could get about up to about 8,000 copies from one lacquer.
So did they make multiple lacquer copies or wax copies? When, you know, the band was performing, they'd have like 17 machines running out there doing these things at the same time, so you could produce a whole bunch of LPs or records, I guess they called them.
I don't know what they did before tape.
And how much does it cost Ampex, because they sold their rights to a magnetic recording tape?
No idea. Different kind of noise is that I have something to say about is film grain. 30 years ago, when we were just developing HDTV, we got some film from Murder, She Wrote from CBS with Angela Lansbury. And the practice had developed, and all the dramatic programs were shot on film, of course, but the practice had developed of using the higher speed, higher grain film because it was just cheaper in terms of lighting and so forth. And it worked fine for NTSC, but when we transferred that in HD, it looked awful. The grain was bad, and you could see all the wrinkles in Angela Lansbury's face.
Well, in the early 70s, there was like a fair amount of, I guess those comedy shows like the Jim Neighbors Hour, Sonny and Cher, and that kind of junk that was being shot on video. And, you go back and you watch that stuff today, and another TV show that's just horrible from their techie side is Sex and the Cities from the 90s. I mean, it's not as wide as a Walton's video show 20 years earlier. And I mean, they've done some, they cut some corners here and there, and it shows up in high definition television.
Yeah. Well, after CBS saw that, they quickly rewrote all their contracts with the producers to use the lower speed, finer grain film. But now, 30 years later, the computer grain removal is so good. It's amazing. The World's Fair group that I hang out with, the guy who transfers all these old home movies has the software that's readily available. It runs about maybe 1/4 real time, but it takes the grain out in just an amazingly clean result.
We got given for our Civil Air Patrol group about 40 VHS tapes that were about airplane stuff. We looked at a few of them, and the YouTube videos that we could find on the internet were cleaner and better. We threw the stuff in the burn pit. It was just junk.
Yeah, there's grain removal, and then there's just the loss of resolution. And the new gear is so good and so clean, it reveals the limitation. Like when CDs first came out, and they revealed the noise floor on the audio tape mastering from what really was familiar in LP format to people. And so when they were shooting in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, some of the TV shows, I had read that Mary Tyler Moore, she insisted in her contract that the show be filmed or recorded on video because she was getting older and didn't want the lines in her face to show. So she wanted that intentional loss of resolution. So if you contrast that with what has aged well in the box as, say, a syndicated TV show, you look at the Rockford Files and you look at, say, Seinfeld, they were shot on film, and you rescan them through a telescene now, and you're able to display it in whatever resolution your set has. And so it's a treat to watch some of the older shows that were indeed preserved on film. Good example, MASH.
Well, the outsides were not shown on TV, and so they actually would cut corners because of the extras with pushing things in and out and, opening doors and closing them behind when somebody walked through a door. Now you can see this stuff, and I did some extra work on Prison Break for about 3 different episodes. I got 38 seconds of Fox National Network video. And the way they did it was they had one Panavision 70mm camera. Each scene was shot 3 times from 3 different directions, and they had put it together because it was cheaper to pay the extras and stuff. And the first rule was you never talk to the main people. The second rule was you didn't touch the walls because everything was being slapped together so fast. The walls were always wet, But it was fun to see how it works behind the scenes. When you see somebody that has perspiration all over their shirt and stuff, heck, the scene could have been shot when it's 35 degrees and they're out there pouring water on everybody so they look like they're perspiring. And putting together a TV show is a lot of work from what I saw.
Weren't the earliest satellite stations that way, and that you could see objects that were cropped out from what would be viewed on a 4x3 analog broadcast? In that, when I say satellite station, I mean these people that would buy the receiver because things weren't encrypted on the early satellites. I'm talking 1978 or so, and people get what I think it was a 3-meter dish and a receiver, and watch the feeds from the network. And I think you could see things like you're talking about around the periphery that normally would be cropped out.
Yeah, a lot of the early TV shows were that way, that were color, because they were assuming you were going to watch this on a round picture tube. And the Andy Williams Christmas specials are kind of interesting because you'll see stagehands if you watch it on an HD TV, and it still holds up pretty good, amazingly enough. But you'll see stagehands moving prop pieces and things like that in the outer edges that would have normally been cropped by a roundy CRT on your RCA color TV set. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, The other things you see are prop corners in the cameras because they lined up the red, green, and blue channels with a combination of optical offset and electrical offset. And as a result, the outer perimeter of the orthicon was different in all three channels. So up in the corners, you see overlapping red, green, and blue edges.
Yeah, a lot of time they weren't registered out the corners. They couldn't get it to do that.
Oh yeah.
Same with converging a round tube or even an early rectangular tube color TV. Sometimes you just couldn't get the outer corners right. So
I did some camera work for First Baptist Dallas, and we had a real problem with the choirs. First of all, I wanted to get the pastor to sit behind the camera, and the man would not run back and forth across the front of the church, you know, and he'd walk out of your scene. But we had all these, the adults, the kids, and so we'd do pushes into the choirs, and then they're sitting there looking at their phones and all this other stuff. And, you know, they're thinking that the people out in the worship area are not seeing this, where they're not, you know. But it was kicking us on trying to put together, you know, edit things. I mean, a lot of times we would run a cover camera that did nothing but pull scenes of people looking at their Bibles and taking notes and a family that was together. And then we'd go back and edit this in, as you know, and they refused to actually talk about real directing at this place. And that meant getting the worship leaders to actually come sit behind a camera and see what goes on, and then sit in the production room because, I mean, Lucille Ball, she knew more about behind the camera than she knew about acting as a silly person. That's how she bought a movie studio, but you know.
I don't know. That's a lot to ask of most people.
I mean, there's a lot that goes on, you know, and the other thing is that, you know, when people take pictures, my wife was second runner up for Homecoming Queen, and she was in college. And the stepdad was taking pictures of all the people coming down the street. Well, you know, you see everything in the picture, not just what you're looking at. And there was this auto repair place behind that had 3 half disassembled cars that are in every single picture. I guess we could digitize that and take that stuff out and put something back there. But, you know, again, doing quality television, doing quality radio, it's hard. It's not easy. I mean, anybody can get in front of a camera and do something, or, you know, like the guy, like Chuck was talking about, you know, Joe Bob's repair place, you know, and I guess if that brings in the people to get their cars fixed, and Joe Bob is making a living at it, then nobody sees the reason to do differently.
Well, a lot of it has to do with good enough, you know. If they can sell it, and if it sells, that's the bottom line, generally speaking. If you want to see an interesting TV show, there was something called the TAMI show, TAMI, which
I've heard of it.
Teenage American Music International or something like that. It was shot live in video, black and white video. You can find it online. You need to find the Blu-ray version of it because it was shot using RCA TK60 image orthicon cameras, black and white, those were a really good camera. They had a 4.5 inch image orthicon tube in them, but it was all shot on that and made into a 35 millimeter kinescope, where they actually, RCA had come up with a kinescope recording method that actually worked pretty good. And it was all shot in the French 719 line, or is it 819? Any rate, the French TV system at 24 frames a second. And it looks like HD TV. I saw this thing, I was on Turner Classic Movies or something one day, 819. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, I saw this thing, I was just flipping channels one day, and here it was on. And I'm going, how on earth did they upconvert this thing? Because it looks fabulous on my big screen TV. And the answer is they didn't. It just has amazing resolution.
Yeah.
And some pretty good, if you like the Rolling Stones and James Brown and a bunch of people like that, James Brown just kills it on the thing. And I was not a James Brown fan until I saw this. and he's pretty amazing. Supposedly Mick Jagger was so worried that he had to follow James Brown. That's when Mick Jagger started dancing around on stage and doing all kinds of uncontrollable movements to try and top James Brown, because they were the closing act. It's worth watching, and the video is just absolutely amazing on the thing, though. I think you'll.
One of the reasons that made TV so good in the 50s and the 60s was it was there for just fun. And there was no political agenda really. And most of the TV people were B-rated ex-movie stars that were jumping over there. And so these, you like to look at the Beverly Hillbillies. And, these people are classically trained actors and actresses. These are not just idiots running around. And Herman Munster, Fred Gwynn, graduated with a master's from Harvard, in some type of acting. And so there was a lot of really, whether you like the shows or not, there was a lot of good people that had really worked their craft,
I was talking to a guy, as a fellow I know here local to me, he was head of maintenance for CBS TV for, I don't know, 40 years or something. And he has a lot of background in these TV shows. And the question came up maybe a few months ago. Somebody was asking what video recorders were used when the Beatles were on the videotape to videotape the Ed Sullivan show at the Sullivan Theater in New York. And when I asked him, his first reaction, well, they may not have ever recorded it. And he said that there weren't any video recorders at the Ed Sullivan Theater. If they recorded anything, it went on telephone video circuits back to CBS headquarters, where he thought it was probably, if they did record it, it was on an RCA TR-22 quad machine back then. But at any rate, the question came up about recording the show. He told me that they would record the rehearsal because it's expensive to record videotape in that era. And so they would record the rehearsals, which I think was on a Friday. And then I think he said the producer would keep that reel of tape, and then they would play it back during the live show on, what was it, Sunday night or something, whenever Ed Sullivan was. And they would just run it as kind of a backup in case there was a calamity during the show, but it wasn't tried. They didn't try to sync it up, but they just had it there as a backup. But at any rate, he said on a lot of those shows, they never recorded them. And one of them in particular was, you mentioned the old time actors. He said there was some soap opera. It might have been Edge of Night or something. You guys would know better than I which one. And at any rate, he said they didn't tape it at all. They just had these retired Hollywood, or retired Broadway actors would come in. They'd memorize the lines, and they'd do 2 performances during the day, one for the East Coast and one for the West Coast. So they never bothered to record any of them. So we think about all these things being on videotape somewhere, but a lot of those shows were not. And he's got some really interesting stories about that. One of the other things you were talking about replicating records, and I always wondered how those Edison cylinders that they used to play on the earliest phonographs were made without having a mold mark, because it's a cylinder and it's got grooves on it for the music. So I was down at that Edison Museum in Florida, and they had a bunch of those machines, and I asked one of the people at the museum, how did they replicate these wax cylinders? He says, oh, they didn't. They just paid the musicians 10 cents every time, and they would just play the same music over and over again, making recordings onto those wax discs or wax cylinders, because they had no way to mold them and stamp them out like they did the later flat discs.
Well, in the movie studios, especially, all the recording for the audio was at one place, and every, sound stage would have the wires back there. And, that would be where, they would say, take or cut or, start, whatever action. And then someone would always yell speed, that the recordings are up to speed, for you. And we used to actually still do that at the church down there. But I asked too many questions about why they were doing crap production, and suddenly I wasn't asked to be a volunteer anymore.
Chuck, you mentioned about the kinescope. You had seen a good recording, and it was surprising. Most of the kinescope recordings I've seen, I've been disappointed in also. But I've been at the museum in Columbus, Ohio, there, and of course they've got quite a few Dumont sets. And the way I take it from my experience at the museum is that Dumont was kind of like a dark horse. I don't know if it was owned by GE or half owned by GE, but
no, they were their own company. They made stuff for GE, but the GE cameras were made. Early ones were made by Dumont.
So, but they were so poor as a network that the only recordings that survive, I believe, of their Dumont were on kinescope. And I had read that when it came to Jackie, most of the kinescope films or whatever were discarded in the New York in the river outside of New York.
Yep.
And
when Metro Media, sorry, go ahead.
Jackie Gleason, I think, is the only artist that really remains on kinescope.
Yeah, well, actually, it's not kinescope, most of it, because the Dumont, Jackie Gleason was on the Dumont television network originally, and he did not like the way the kinescopes looked, and that was the way you distributed TV shows at that time, because there's no satellite, none of the stuff that we take for granted existed. So they made kinescopes of the shows, and they looked horrible. I mean, most kinescopes look horrible. I mean, if you've taken pictures off your TV, it looks horrible. So he came up with the idea of combining a 35 millimeter film camera with a TV camera. We have one of I'm not sure how many they made. I can only document 5, but there probably were more. Is Julian Burke on here? He's got one, I think. As far as I know, there's 3 of them in existence, but it's a 35 millimeter camera or a 16 millimeter, your choice. Ours is an Aeroflex inside the thing that shares the optics with the black and white TV camera. And they had 3 of them on Gleason. And they would make a kinescope of the show done live, so they know how to edit it. But they'd take that film that they shot with the Dumont Electronicam and would edit it together to look like the show as it was presented live. And they made prints off of that and shipped those off to their affiliates. And you're right, when Dumont went out of business, Metro Media bought the stations and the network pretty much. Later, Metro Media sold out to Fox, so technically the Dumont network is the grandfather of the Fox network. But at any rate, Metro Media didn't want to store all these kinescopes, and a lot of it was Ernie Kovacs shows, and so they dumped them in the East River. So at least so the story goes. So they all got lost. The real problem.
So the one clear Jackie Gleason episode that I've seen was probably a reassembled 35 millimeter film shoot, huh?
Yeah, if at the end it'll say filmed on the Dumont Electronicam system on the credits, and you can see those on YouTube, and they look really good. They should. I mean, they were shot on 35 millimeter film. They also made some 16 millimeters, and that's what we have that were used for Captain Video. But I've never seen any of the films off of that. I've seen a kinescope of Captain Video that looks absolutely putrid, but but apparently that's how they recorded that, because there's no videotape until 1956 or so.
You mentioned a 35 millimeter kinescope from the French system, and actually 35 millimeter from any system would be an exception, because the local stations didn't have 35 millimeter
that's true.
projectors.
Only the networks had 35 millimeter projectors. Every TV station I ever worked at had 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
And the difference is startling between 16 millimeter and 35 millimeter. But they were also shooting it into Vidicon cameras that had a bunch of lag, and that was kind of intentional in some ways.
That's how they got rid of that's how they were able to use the non-synchronous shutter. But
they got rid of the flicker that way.
Yeah,
I remember when I was a kid watching the old movies and TV that were run through a Vidicon telecine, and you'd get night scenes of the train rushing through the night, and all you could see was multiple fading impressions of the headlight.
Yep. Yeah. It's kind of trailing a lag on the thing. Of course, it depends how good your Vidicon tubes were too, but you know, they weren't all that swell for film transfers, or for anything really, but they were cheap, you know, so.
Yeah, well, the dynamic range was just a total mismatch between the theatrical film, which is deliberately made contrasty to for projection in a dark theater, and you know, they never made prints specifically for televising.
Well, an awful lot of this just had to do with money, because as somebody's pointed out on the message on the chat board, that 16mm film is just a lot cheaper, and a lot of stuff that was color they shot using Ektachrome, which was cheap film and it's cheap processing and it was high speed. So, you know, with 400 ASA rather than 50 or whatever Kodachrome was, you didn't have to light it as much and so on. Catch is the film is very grainy, as you pointed out, and it also fades horribly. You get a 20 or 30-year-old piece of Ektachrome film and everything's turned either purple or green on the thing, and there's no amount of correction you can do to fix that. Well, there might be now, but there wasn't anyway. So that was a big problem. But it was cheap. It was all about money. Still is, I guess.
Well, the old saying is content is king.
Yep. Well, if the show had a good plot and the actors were good and everything was, you know, interesting, then it didn't matter. We'd watch it and think that's as good as TV got, because we hadn't seen HD TV yet. So
it's horrible trying to watch the Super Bowl from, say, for 1993 when the Cowboys won for the first time since the 70s, and just and back in the day at Texas Stadium, which was turned the wrong direction, and in the afternoon with the overbrights through the roof, and the cameras would move and it would overwhelm the cameras. Although sometime in the 80s they worked around that or fixed it, got better cameras. But
well, originally KRLD did most of the live Cowboy games from there, and they had GE PE 250 cameras. I think they upgraded them to 350s or something, but they didn't handle lighting dynamics very well at all. They weren't that bad a camera. They were, from an operator's point of view, okay, and a lot of everybody in Texas had these things, but their picture, they just couldn't handle going from extreme bright to not that bright at all, which was the problem in Texas Stadium. So, hey folks, this has been a lot of fun, but I gotta go. I haven't eaten.
Well, he's in East Texas and going to bedtime, you know, down there. They have people that come around and tell you to go to bed.
Well, it's not that. I haven't eaten yet, and I have to.
I was just joking.
I have to work a church service in the morning. I do audio for a local church, so they will expect me to be alive and well, and attentive. It's the Super Bowl of church services tomorrow, you know.
Yeah. So I thought that this museum was up in Ohio or Indiana. I didn't realize it was in Kilgore.
No, there's two museums. The ETF is in Ohio. It's in, and you need to go. It's a wonderful museum, and they have stuff. When you're talking about early television, the ETF has it. I mean, there's pre-war stuff there. There's British. There's stuff you will never ever see. But I'm with the Texas Broadcast Museum, which is in Kilgore. And we've turned into a really pretty good sized museum.
Right next to the oil museum and the Rangerette Museum.
Yeah, exactly. We're right down the street, and they're all our friends. And a lot of people come to Kilgore just to go see the three museums for the day. It works. We're only open on weekends, on Fridays and Saturdays, because it's all volunteers. Maybe someday we'll be able to do something, but right now that's as best we can do. But we've been open 8 years. If you like TV cameras, we have a lot of them. We've got a whole ton of them in storage, but last I counted, there's 109 on display. So there's a lot of cameras. And
you got your Kilgore. You got your Kilgore Oil Well shirt on, I noticed.
Well, actually, this is the museum shirt. That's our logo. It looks, well, Kilgore used to be claim it was the oil capital of America, and
it was in 33.
Oh, definitely was. and later too. I mean, and it's still a big deal there. Although Yamaha makes boats in Kilgore, and General Dynamics makes satellite dishes in Kilgore, and there's several other giant. Wagner Automotive has a big plant there. There's all kinds of weird stuff. It has nothing to do with oil, but it's still a kind of an oil-based economy, and the downtown area still has oil derricks.
World's richest acre.
The world's richest acre, exactly. It was. I mean, the history of that is really quite fascinating.
Well, is the Krim family actually still lives down there? There's descendants.
Some of them do.
That Lou Della Krim #3 was where the Daisy Bradford #3 I think was the one that brought it in, but that's all neither here nor there. We'll have to come down and see you there.
Well, you do. The Krim family is still there. Their descendants are there. I know Leggett Krim lives in Dallas and worked in the AV industry, so go figure, you know. But there's a whole bunch of people who their families did very well back in the 30s and 40s. And Kilgore is actually credited for helping win World War II because we had oil and the Germans didn't. There's actually a pipeline that still exists. They call it the Big Inch Pipeline that goes from Kilgore to the oil refineries in New Jersey. So they could go ship it out to wherever they needed to in Europe. So
it was such an exciting place, believe it or not, that my parents in 1942 went out because of the war was going on and Daddy was not in the military. They went on their 2-day honeymoon to Kilgore.
Okay, why not? But it went from a population of about 1,500 to 30,000 overnight, pretty much. So it was pretty wild and woolly. They had everything, you name it, good, bad, and indifferent. It was there.
Well, slant drilling was invented in Kilgore that
Yes,
they
it
use
was.
for wells now, and the Saudis were stealing from the Kuwaitis. No, the Kuwaitis were stealing from Iraq and it started the 90 war. But slant drilling to steel was invented in Kilgore.
Yep. There's some fascinating books about it. There's one that I think was really great when all the slant drilling came to light and the hot oil and all this stuff. Somebody sent out a Christmas invitation to their Christmas party they were going to have, and on the invitation it says, "If you're not indicted, you're not invited."
The reason the mafia could never be down there was because there was too much money, and you think that the mafia would send a button guy out to a rig to pick up the money. Well, you know, oil drilling people, roughnecks, are tough folks.
Yep,
we
that's hard
played
work.
football against some of those people's kids over in New London and stuff. The cheerleaders could have suited up and kicked our tail. and
Yeah, they could
you
have.
know, you come out there and say, "Well, I want my cut." They'll cut the mafia guy up and shove him down the wellhead, and nobody will ask questions.
And he will disappear, and nobody's ever heard from him again.
Everybody had a gun and a knife in East Texas.
They may still.
Sometimes there was a guy that worked around a repair place there in the late 90s that he had 2 different Uzis in his repair place, just in case somebody stopped.
There was an ad. Somebody had a supplement in the newspaper one Sunday for some gun shop that was in Tyler, actually. But the back page, they were selling a flamethrower. It's like, who needs a flamethrower? What on earth are you going to do with it? Kill weeds? I don't know. I guess it's cool, you know, but everybody needs a flamethrower. And this was advertised in the newspaper.
Puts a whole new emphasis on road rage. But in Texas, you don't piss off people on the freeways because, you know, everybody has a gun.
Yeah, well, there's that. Oh, well, I've never had any problem with it. I like it here, so. But I have to go, guys. This has been fun, but I really do need to eat some dinner and get my beauty sleep, so I'll be alert tomorrow morning.
Okay. Thank you for
Because I
doing
need
this.
All right. You guys take care. I guess Steve has left a long time ago, but you know, as long as you guys want to talk, have a good time and have a good night. We'll see you.
Yeah, I think I'm tuning out also. Good night.
Good night.